"Your wife is alive. I saw her, wounded and abandoned amid the trash," shouted in desperation the janitor's daughter at the widowed businessman in front of everyone. The morning sun streamed through the wide windows of the office, but William Morrison did not lift his eyes from the papers scattered across the mahogany desk. At 45 years old, he had learned that discipline was the only remedy for the pain that insisted on inhabiting his days. 6 months. It had been exactly 6 months since Catherine had departed, and he still counted each day as if it were an accounting with silence itself. The small town of Millbrook continued its predictable rhythm outside. From the second-floor window, William could see the morning bustle. Merchants opening their shops, children walking to school, life happening with the naturalness of those who never needed to question whether any of it made sense. For him, however, every gesture had become mechanical, every decision an exercise in controlling the chaos that threatened to explode within his chest. Catherine. The name still echoed in his memory like an interrupted melody. She had been found in the river, beneath the bridge that cut through the town, her body so damaged that identification depended only on her clothes and personal belongings. William never saw her face. He trusted the official report, the procedures that others conducted, the closed casket, and the promise that it was better to preserve the last image he had of her. He buried not only his wife, but also any questioning about that tragedy. What few knew, perhaps not even Catherine herself knew, was that the marriage was already navigating troubled waters before the accident. William had lost himself in the routine of business, in responsibilities that grew along with the company's success. He confused presence with care, provision with affection. The unspoken words accumulated like dust in the corners of the house, creating a silence that had now transformed into guilt. "Mr. Morrison?" Patricia's soft voice brought him back to the present. She stood in the doorway, elegant as always, with her blonde hair pulled back in an impeccable bun and a discreet smile that had become familiar in recent months. Patricia had appeared in his life shortly after Catherine's loss, offering emotional support, organizing documents, resolving bureaucratic matters, and positioning herself as the only person capable of helping him move forward. "The municipal construction contracts are ready for your signature," she said, approaching the desk with a folder in her hands. "And there's an important call from City Hall waiting." William nodded, grateful for her efficiency. Patricia had become indispensable, filling gaps he didn't even know existed. While signing the documents, he noticed the subtle perfume she wore, something that never bothered him, but also never truly touched him. It was as if a part of himself had been buried with Catherine, leaving only the practical man, the businessman who knew how to solve problems, but who had forgotten how to feel. "William," Patricia lightly touched his shoulder, "you need to take better care of yourself. Catherine wouldn't want to see you like this." The mention of his wife's name still made him hesitate for a second. Patricia always knew what to say, always found the right words to remind him that life continued, that Catherine would want him to be happy. It was comforting and disturbing at the same time. "You're right," he replied, closing the contract folder. "I'll go home for lunch today." "Excellent idea. I can accompany you if you'd like. There are some foundation matters we could discuss." William was about to agree when he heard raised voices from downstairs. One belonged to Mary, the cleaning lady who had worked at the company for years. The other, higher pitched, seemed to be from a child. Patricia frowned, bothered by the interruption. "I'll handle this," she said, heading toward the door. "No," William stood up. "I'll go." He went downstairs with Patricia right behind him. In the entrance hall, he found Mary trying to calm a girl of about 9 years old, thin, with simple clothes, and large eyes that seemed to carry a weight disproportionate to her age. "Sorry, Mr. William," Mary spoke, visibly nervous. "Emma won't leave. She says she needs to talk to you." The girl raised her face, and William felt something strange upon meeting that determined gaze. There was courage there, mixed with fear, as if she were about to reveal a secret that could change everything. "What do you want, child?" Patricia intervened, with a tone that tried to be gentle but sounded impatient. Emma looked at Patricia, then at William, took a deep breath and said, "I saw a woman who looks very much like your wife, sir. She's hurt, but she's alive." The silence that followed was deafening. The world seemed to stop for an instant. William felt the ground slip away under his feet, while the girl's words echoed in the entrance hall like an impossible echo. Patricia was the first to react, with a forced laugh that sounded louder than it should. "What nonsense is this?" she said, approaching Emma with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Child, you shouldn't make up stories like that. It's very cruel." Mary pulled her daughter by the arm, her face red with embarrassment. "Emma, apologize right now. Mr. William has suffered enough." But the girl didn't move. Her eyes remained fixed on William, as if she could see beyond the mask of control he wore daily. "She has a small mark on her right arm," Emma said, ignoring her mother and Patricia. "It looks like a crescent moon, and she speaks softly when she's nervous, almost whispering." William felt his blood freeze. The mark. Catherine had been born with a birthmark shaped like a half-moon on her right forearm, something she always tried to hide with long sleeves or bracelets, and the way she spoke when anxious. Only someone very close would know these details. "How do you—" he began to ask, but Patricia interrupted him. "William, you can't listen to this," she said, with an urgency he had never noticed before. "It's too cruel. Catherine is dead. We were both at the funeral." "But you never saw her face, did you?" Emma insisted, and her words cut like a blade. "My mother told me the casket was closed." Mary turned pale. "Emma, shut up! You don't know what you're saying." "I do know, Mom." The girl turned to her mother with tears in her eyes. "You always said to tell the truth, so that's what I'm doing." William observed the scene with a mixture of pain and fascination. There was something in that child's determination that touched him deeply. Emma didn't seem to be making it up. She seemed to be releasing a weight she had carried for a long time. "Where did you see this woman?" William asked, ignoring Patricia's disapproving look. "In the neighborhood where I live, near the vacant lot," Emma replied quickly. "She was hiding in the abandoned warehouse, skinny, hurt, afraid. When I approached, she hid, but I could see her face. It's just like the photo on your desk." Patricia gripped William's arm tightly. "You can't believe this. It's a child's fantasy. Catherine died, William. You need to accept it and move on. We both need to move on." Patricia's choice of words, "we both," sounded strange to William's ears. When had she begun to include herself so naturally in his life? He looked at her and, for the first time, noticed something that had always been there but he had never perceived, the discomfort in her eyes, as if Emma's words represented a real threat. "Mom," Emma turned to Mary, "tell him about that night." Mary shook her head vigorously. "No, Emma, it's not our—" "What night?" William asked, his voice firmer than it had been in months. The silence stretched. Mary looked at the floor, clearly torn between the fear of speaking and the weight of what she knew. Patricia watched everything with growing irritation. "Mary?" William addressed directly the woman who had cleaned his office and house for years, who had always been there, invisible in the landscape of his privileged life. "What happened that night?" "Mr. William, Mary swallowed hard. "I shouldn't have seen anything. I'm nobody to question." "You are someone," William said, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. "Talk to me." Mary looked at her daughter, then at Patricia, who stared at her with a look that wasn't gentle at all, and finally at William. "That night, when Mrs. Catherine disappeared, I was leaving late from your house." I'd stayed to clean the kitchen after dinner. I saw someone leaving through the back door very late, when there shouldn't have been anyone there. Who was it? William asked, though something inside him already knew the answer. Mary hesitated, quickly glancing at Patricia. I can't be sure. It was dark and— Mom, Emma protested. Tell the truth. This is ridiculous. Patricia intervened, her voice now clearly agitated. William, you're allowing two people to destroy your peace with fantasies and insinuations. Catherine is dead. Period. William noticed how Patricia almost said these two people, but corrected herself. He also noticed how she spoke of Catherine with a coldness that contrasted with all the compassion she had shown in recent months. I want to hear the rest, he said. No, you don't. Patricia gripped his arm again. You want to live in peace, remember? That's what we talked about. You want to honor Catherine's memory by moving forward. But William freed himself from her touch and knelt in front of Emma, getting at eye level with the girl. Take me to this woman, he said. And for the first time in 6 months, he felt he was making a decision that truly mattered. The walk to the neighborhood where Mary and Emma lived was tense and silent. Patricia had insisted on accompanying them, claiming that William needed emotional support to face another disappointment. Mary followed a few steps behind, visibly uncomfortable with the whole situation, while Emma walked determinedly ahead, as if carrying a mission that couldn't fail. The contrast between the neighborhoods was striking. From the central area where William's office and imposing house were located, they passed through increasingly narrow streets, simpler houses, until they reached what seemed to be the forgotten outskirts of the town. William rarely came to this part of town, and felt like a foreigner in his own territory. It's over there, Emma pointed to a vacant lot, surrounded by a rusty barbed wire fence. In the back, among tall weeds and rubble, were the remains of an old industrial warehouse. Emma, this is dangerous, Mary murmured. That place could collapse at any moment. She's there, Mom, the girl replied with conviction. I know she is. Patricia looked around with evident discomfort, holding her purse against her body as if she feared being robbed at any moment. William, this is madness. We can't go in there. It's private property, and besides, it's completely unsafe. But William had already found an opening in the fence. Rust had corroded the wire in several places, creating a passage through which a thin person could squeeze. Sir, I'll go first, Emma said, slipping through the opening with the agility of someone who had done it before. William followed her, slightly tearing his suit on the wire. Mary hesitated for a moment before accompanying them, leaving Patricia outside. I'll call the police if you don't come out of there in 5 minutes, she shouted. The interior of the warehouse was in ruins. Broken tiles let in beams of sunlight that created a ghostly play of shadows. The floor was covered with debris, pieces of wood, and remains of what had once been industrial machinery. The air smelled of dampness and abandonment. She stays there, Emma whispered, pointing to a corner where some metal sheets seemed to have been arranged as a kind of improvised shelter. William approached slowly, his heart beating so hard he could hear his own heartbeats. Mary held her daughter's hand, both watching in silence. Behind the sheets, almost invisible among rags and cardboard, was a human figure curled up. William felt his legs tremble when he recognized the shape of the shoulders, the curvature of the back he had caressed so many times. Catherine, he whispered. The figure moved slightly, like a frightened animal. When she turned, William saw a face that was both familiar and unrecognizable. Catherine was alive, but looked like a shadow of herself. Too thin, with dirty and tangled hair. Clothes that seemed not to have been changed in weeks. But it was the eyes that shocked him most. Eyes he knew intimately, now filled with deep fear and confusion that broke his heart. Catherine, he repeated, approaching slowly. It's me, William. She looked at him for a long moment, as if trying to process very complex information. Then slowly, she extended a trembling hand toward him. "William?" The voice came out as a hoarse whisper. Are you real?" He knelt beside her, taking her hand in his. It was cold and very thin, but it was real. It was Catherine. "I'm here," he said, trying to control the emotion in his voice. "You're alive. My God, you're alive." Catherine tried to sit up, but the movement seemed to require enormous effort. William noticed bruises on her face, some old, others more recent. There was something deeply wrong with the whole situation. "I tried," she murmured. "I tried to come home, but she said that you didn't want, that I was dead to you." "Who said that?" William asked, though part of him already knew the answer. "The woman. The blonde woman. She said you were happy without me, that I should never come back." From outside the warehouse, they could hear Patricia's voice calling, "William, come out of there now. This is dangerous." Catherine heard the voice and shrank even more, genuine terror taking over her eyes. "She's here," she whispered, grabbing William's shirt with desperate force. "Don't let her see me. Please, don't let her take me again." William felt a cold anger growing inside his chest. He looked at Mary, who was pale, with Emma hugged against her. "Mary," he said, his voice low but firm. "Who did you see leaving my house that night?" Mary looked at Catherine, then at her daughter, and finally found courage to speak. "It was her, sir, the blonde lady. I saw her leaving late, very late. And the next day, when we learned about the accident, she showed up early at your house, saying she wanted to help with the procedures." Catherine began to tremble violently. "She gave me something in the drink. I remember being dizzy, confused. Then I woke up in a dark place. She said you had asked to have me committed, that I was crazy." The puzzle pieces began to fit together in William's mind, forming a horrible picture of manipulation and betrayal. From outside, Patricia's voice sounded closer. "If you don't come out, I'm coming in there!" Catherine clung to William with desperation. "Don't leave me with her. Please, don't leave me." William looked at the woman he loved, reduced to a haunted shadow, and made the most important decision of his life. "No one will ever hurt you again," he promised. "I swear." The exit from the warehouse was a moment of almost unbearable tension. William carried Catherine in his arms, feeling how she was too light, too fragile, while Mary and Emma accompanied them in respectful silence. When they emerged into the daylight, Patricia was standing by the fence, her face a mask of concern that couldn't completely hide her irritation. "My God, William, what have you done?" she exclaimed, approaching quickly. "Who is this woman? She needs medical help, but she can't be." Patricia stopped abruptly when Catherine raised her face and looked directly at her. For a moment, something passed between the two women, a recognition that made William's blood freeze in his veins. "Hello, Patricia," Catherine said, her voice weak but laden with meaning that everyone could feel. Patricia paled, but quickly recomposed her expression. "William, this woman is clearly confused. She must have some serious mental problem. Catherine is dead. We saw the funeral." "And we saw a closed casket," William corrected, his voice ice cold. "We never saw a body. Because there were no conditions. The accident was terrible," Patricia insisted, but there was something desperate in her voice now. "You can't believe that this person is Catherine. It's too cruel." Catherine tried to move in William's arms, struggling to stand. He helped her lean against him, keeping an arm around her to support her. "I know who I am," Catherine said, looking directly at Patricia, "and I know what you did to me." "William, she's delirious." Patricia took a step back. "She needs urgent psychiatric help. She can't confuse reality this way." But William was observing both women's reactions. Catherine was trembling, yes, she was weak and confused, but there was a lucidity in her eyes that he recognized. Patricia, on the other hand, seemed to be fighting to maintain control of a situation that was slipping from her hands. "Take me home," Catherine whispered to William. "Please, just take me home." "No!" Patricia protested with more vehemence than the situation justified. "William, think about what this will cause in the town. People will think you've gone crazy. What if this woman is dangerous? What if she's just an opportunist who took advantage of information about Catherine?" Emma, who had remained silent until then, stepped forward. "Miss," she said, looking directly at Patricia, "why are you so afraid of Mr. William taking this woman home?" The simple and direct question from a child had the effect of a perfect shot. Patricia looked at Emma as if she were a small, venomous snake. "I'm not afraid of anything, she said, trying to sound convincing. "I'm just concerned about William's well-being." "Since when?" Catherine asked, her voice gaining strength. "Since when do you care so much about my husband?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Patricia looked around, realizing she had become the center of attention for all the wrong reasons. "I have been a friend to William during this difficult period," she said. "A real friend who helped him overcome the loss and move forward. And now you want to destroy this peace with this farce. What kind of friend have you been?" "Patricia?" William asked, his voice low but loaded with new understanding. Patricia looked at him, and for the first time since they had known each other, he saw something he had never noticed. Calculation. There was calculation in her eyes, as if she were constantly measuring words, gestures, opportunities. "The kind of friend who was by your side when you needed it most," she replied. "The kind of friend who organized all the paperwork, who took care of the bureaucratic details, who ensured everything was resolved quickly so you wouldn't suffer more than necessary." "What paperwork?" Catherine asked. "What bureaucratic details?" "Those related to the accident," Patricia replied, but her hesitation was notable. Catherine turned to William. "What accident?" "William, what accident? I remember being at home, having that tea she brought. Then I don't remember anything else until I woke up in a dark place." William felt the world spin. All the pieces began to fit together in a way that made terrible sense. The speed with which Patricia had appeared after the accident, the efficiency with which she resolved all bureaucratic problems, the insistence that he move forward. "Patricia," he said, his voice dangerously calm, "I think we have a lot to talk about." "No," she replied, taking several steps back. "We have nothing to talk about. William, you're being manipulated by a disturbed woman and a child who doesn't know what she's saying. Catherine is dead. You need to accept that and preserve your mental sanity." But while speaking, Patricia was moving away, and William realized she was moving away quickly, like someone preparing to flee. "Mary," he said, "call Dr. Stevens. Tell him it's a medical emergency, and then call the police." "The police?" Patricia stopped abruptly. "Why the police?" William looked at her with a clarity he hadn't felt in months. "Because I think Catherine didn't suffer any accident. I think she was kidnapped, and I think you know exactly how that happened." The silence that followed was broken only by Catherine whispering, "Thank you for finding me. Thank you for believing." And William knew that regardless of what came next, he had made the right decision. Millbrook General Hospital had never received a case like that. Dr. Stevens, the Morrison family doctor for more than 20 years, examined Catherine in silence, his expression becoming more somber with each discovery. William waited in the hallway, watching through the door's glass while nurses cared for the woman he had given up for dead. "Severe malnutrition, doctor," Stevens said upon leaving the room, removing his surgical gloves. "Signs of prolonged confinement, some old contusions and—" He hesitated. "William, there are sedative residues in her blood. Someone kept her drugged for a considerable time." The words fell like stones in William's stomach. He leaned against the wall, feeling the weight of guilt crushing his shoulders. How could I not notice? How could I simply accept that she was dead without questioning anything? You trusted the system. Dr. Stevens placed an understanding hand on his friend's shoulder. You trusted the right people for the wrong reasons. But she's alive, William, and with proper care she'll recover completely. At that moment, Catherine awakened. Her eyes searched for William through the glass, and he immediately entered the room. She was clean now, wearing hospital clothes, but still looked like a ghostly version of herself. "How are you feeling?" he asked, being careful not to frighten her. "Confused," she admitted. "The memories are coming back in pieces. I remember our fight that night, about how empty our life had become." William lowered his head. The fight. He had tried to erase that memory, along with so many others. "Catherine, No," she interrupted gently. "Let me speak. I need to speak while I can remember. After the fight, you left. I stayed home, crying. Then Patricia arrived. She said you had asked her to come talk to me. I never asked for that. I know that now, but that night, I was so hurt that I believed it. She made tea, said it would calm me. It was after drinking the tea that everything became confusing." Catherine closed her eyes as if the effort of remembering was physical. "I woke up in a dark place, like a basement. Patricia was there. She said you had discovered I was having an affair, that you wanted to have me committed to a psychiatric clinic. She said it was better for me to disappear, pretend I was dead, so as not to embarrass the family." "My God," William whispered. "I was so confused by the drug she gave me that I almost believed it. I almost believed you hated me that much. But part of me knew it wasn't true. That's why I kept trying to escape." Outside the room, there was movement. William saw 2 police officers talking to Dr. Stevens. Soon after, they headed to the room. "Mr. Morrison?" Sheriff Thompson, a man William knew from the town's social circles, entered respectfully. "We need to talk about the case, and we'd like to hear Mrs. Catherine's statement." "She's still very fragile," Dr. Stevens protested. "I understand, Doctor, but there are urgent matters. Miss Patricia Williams was not found at her residence. The apartment is empty, as if she had left in a hurry." William wasn't surprised, but felt a mixture of anger and relief. Anger because Patricia had fled before she could be confronted. Relief because Catherine was finally safe. "Sheriff," Catherine said, her voice still weak but determined. "I can speak now. I need to speak." In the following 2 hours, Catherine told everything she could remember. The tea with the strange taste, the periods of consciousness interspersed with heavy sedation, the lies Patricia told about William not wanting to see her anymore, the moments when she tried to escape and was found and punished. "She said she was protecting me," Catherine reported. "That the world outside was too cruel for me, that William had moved on and was happy without me. She said I should be grateful that she was taking care of me." "Where exactly were you confined, ma'am?" the sheriff asked. "I don't know for sure. It was a basement or cellar, but I heard traffic noise sometimes, and there was a small high window through which I could see pieces of buildings. I think it was in the town centre." William felt a chill. Patricia's apartment was in the town centre. "When I managed to escape the last time," Catherine continued, "I was so weak I couldn't go very far. I hid in that abandoned warehouse. I was afraid to go home because she had convinced me you didn't want me anymore." "I never stopped loving you," William said, holding her hand. "Never." Catherine smiled for the first time since she had been found, but it was a sad smile. "I know that now. But for months I believed I had lost everything. My husband, my home, my life. If it weren't for that girl." "Emma," William completed. "She saved your life." "She saved both of us," Catherine corrected. Outside, the sun was setting. William looked out the window and saw Mary and Emma in the hospital parking lot, waiting patiently for news. The girl who had found Catherine, the woman who had kept secrets for so long, both represented a courage he himself had lost at some point. "Sheriff," William said, "I want to offer a reward for Patricia Williams' capture, a substantial reward." "That won't be necessary, Mr. Morrison. We already have an arrest warrant being issued, and we're investigating her real identity. Patricia Williams might not even be her real name." Catherine squeezed William's hand. She knew everything about our life, about our problems, our habits. How did she get this information? It was a question that would haunt William in the coming weeks. But at that moment, all that mattered was that Catherine was alive, was safe, and that he had a second chance to do things right. "Shall we go home?" he asked. "Yes," she replied. "But this time let's talk. Let's really talk." 3 weeks had passed since the reunion, and the Morrison house had transformed into something completely different. Catherine was still recovering physically, but it was the silence between them that weighed most heavily. They talked about practical things, medications, medical appointments, legal procedures, but carefully avoided the subjects that really mattered. William had become excessively attentive, as if he could compensate for months of absence with constant care. Catherine accepted the solicitude, but there was a distance in her eyes that he couldn't bridge. "The private investigator I hired discovered some things," William said during breakfast, breaking the careful silence that had established itself between them. Catherine raised her eyes from the barely touched plate. "About Patricia. About Rebecca Stone. That's her real name. She has an extensive history. 3 different cities, always the same pattern. She approaches men in situations of fragility, gains their trust, and then... And then what?" William hesitated. The truth was too brutal, but Catherine deserved to know. In 2 previous cases, the wives simply disappeared. They were never found. The silence that followed was deafening. Catherine put her fork on the plate with trembling hands. "So I was lucky," she said, but her voice sounded hollow. "Catherine, it wasn't luck, it was Emma. It was Mary. It was you fighting to survive even when everything seemed lost." She looked at him with an expression he couldn't decipher. "And you? Where were you, William? During all those months, where were you?" The question cut like a blade. William had prepared for this moment, but still didn't know how to respond. "I was accepting, believing what was easier to believe. You were replacing our life with a more convenient version," Catherine said, her voice gaining a hardness he had rarely heard. "A version where you could be the grieving widower, consoled by a beautiful and efficient woman." "Catherine, it wasn't like that, wasn't it?" She stood up from the table. "William, you buried an empty casket. You never questioned, never investigated, never doubted. And in less than a month, you already had another woman organizing your life, sleeping in our house." The accusation hit William squarely. Patricia had indeed slept at the house sometimes, always in the guest room, always with some practical justification. But Catherine was right. He had accepted the new reality with an ease that now shamed him. "You're right," he admitted. "I failed. As a husband, as a man, as a person, I failed completely." Catherine observed him for a long moment. "What kills me isn't that you moved on. It's how you moved on. Without questioning, without fighting, without even trying to understand what had happened to me. Catherine, do you know what the worst part of all those months was?" she continued. "It wasn't the captivity. It wasn't the drugs. It wasn't even the fear. It was believing that you really didn't care enough to look for me." William felt the ground disappear under his feet. Every word from Catherine was true and cutting. And the saddest thing is that she knew me, William. Rebecca knew exactly where to hit me because she knew our marriage. She knew we had grown apart, that you took refuge in work, that I felt invisible. She used our own wounds against us. How did she know all this? Catherine walked to the window, observing the garden she had cared for with such affection before the kidnapping. Remember Mary mentioning she saw someone leaving our house that night? I've been thinking a lot about that. Rebecca didn't appear out of nowhere after my accident. She was already here before. William frowned. What do you mean? How many times did she call your office in the weeks before the kidnapping? How many times did she show up with some excuse to talk to you? William began to remember. Rebecca had appeared a few weeks before Catherine's disappearance, introducing herself as a consultant for an insurance company. Then she came back with questions about the company's charitable foundation. There was always a professional reason to be there. She was studying us, Catherine continued, learning our habits, our problems, our weaknesses, and when the right moment came, after our fight, she acted. The fight, William murmured, remembering that terrible night. They had argued about everything and nothing, about how he was never present, about how she felt alone in her own marriage, about how they had become strangers living in the same house. William had left, slamming the door, driven around town for hours, returned home late to find Catherine sleeping. Except she wasn't sleeping. She had already been kidnapped. William, Catherine turned to him. I need to know something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Anything. During those months with her, did you come to love Rebecca? The question hung in the air like a bomb about to explode. William knew the answer would define everything that came after. No, he said, and saw relief in Catherine's eyes. But I also can't say I loved you less than you deserved. She filled a void, Catherine. A void I had created in our marriage long before you disappeared. Catherine nodded slowly. At least you're being honest. And you? William asked. Can you forgive me? Can you forgive us? Catherine returned to the table but didn't sit down. She stood, looking at the man she had married 15 years ago. I don't know, she said finally. I really don't know. The discoveries came like successive waves, each one more devastating than the last. The private investigator William had hired found evidence that transformed suspicions into absolute certainty. Mr. Morrison, said the investigator Charles Bennett, opening a folder full of documents on the office table, what we discovered goes beyond a simple kidnapping. Rebecca Stone operated a complex and premeditated scheme. William leaned over the table, Catherine beside him. In recent weeks, she had insisted on accompanying all investigations, as if she needed to completely understand the extent of the betrayal to be able to process the trauma. She didn't choose you randomly, Bennett continued. Rebecca researched your family for months. We have records of phone calls to your employees, conversations with suppliers, even a recorded conversation with your former housekeeper. Martha, Catherine murmured. Martha had worked for them years before, knew all the intimate details of the couple's life. Exactly, Rebecca pretended to be Catherine's cousin who lived far away and wanted to make a surprise for your wedding anniversary. Martha, without malice, told everything about your lives. The marital problems, the arguments, even where Catherine kept her jewelry. William felt nauseous. The manipulation had been much deeper than he had imagined. There's more. Bennett turned a page. We found the place where Catherine was kept prisoner. It was the basement of a commercial building that Rebecca rented 2 months before the kidnapping. She paid 6 months in advance, in cash. What did you find there? Catherine asked, her voice controlled but tense. Enough evidence for 20 years in prison, security cameras that recorded everything, controlled medications, falsified documents, including a fake death certificate with Catherine's name. The silence in the room was broken by Catherine's heavy breathing. William instinctively placed his hand on her shoulder, but felt her contract slightly at the touch. "There's something else you need to know." Bennett hesitated. "We also found Rebecca's personal diary and some audio recordings." "What kind of recordings?" William asked, though he feared the answer. "Phone conversations between you two." Bennett looked at William. "Rebecca recorded all the calls she made to you during the months Catherine was missing. The recordings show that she studied your reactions, adapted her responses to keep you emotionally dependent." Catherine stood abruptly from the chair. "I want to hear them." "Catherine, I don't think that's a good idea." "I said I want to hear them," she repeated, looking directly at Bennett. The investigator looked at William, who nodded reluctantly. Bennett turned on a small recorder, and Rebecca's voice filled the room. "Hello, William. Sorry to call so late, but I was thinking about you. I know today marks 2 months. Are you okay?" William's voice on the recording sounded tired, vulnerable. "Thanks for calling, Patricia. I was. It's hard to sleep." "I know. Catherine wouldn't want to see you like this, suffering so much. She would want you to find a little peace. Maybe we should have dinner together tomorrow, just so you won't be alone." Catherine asked to stop the recording. "She knew exactly what to say," she murmured. "She used my name, my memory, to manipulate you." "Catherine, I didn't know." "I know you didn't know," she interrupted him, "but that doesn't make it less painful." Bennett closed the recorder. "There's one more thing. We found correspondence between Rebecca and an accomplice, her brother, Michael Stone. He was involved from the beginning." "Where is he now?" William asked. "He was arrested last night trying to leave the country, and he was willing to negotiate information in exchange for a lesser sentence." Bennett's phone rang. He answered quickly, murmured a few words and hung up. "That was Sheriff Thompson. Rebecca has been located. She's under arrest in Chicago." Catherine closed her eyes for a long moment. "It's over," she said finally. "Yes," Bennett confirmed. "It's over." But when Catherine opened her eyes and looked at William, he realized that for her, something had ended far beyond the investigation. There was a finality in her gaze that terrified him. "Catherine." "William," she said calmly, "I need time. Away from all this. Away from you." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that during all those months, while I was fighting to survive and return home, you were building a new life, and even though that life was based on lies, you accepted it. You moved on, because I thought you were dead. And I thought you didn't love me anymore. We both believed lies, William. But the difference is that I never stopped fighting to come home. You simply accepted a substitute." William felt the world crumble around him. "Catherine, please, we can rebuild this. We can be happy again." She looked at him with deep sadness. "Maybe we can, but first, I need to discover who I am after all this, and you need to discover why it was so easy to replace me." And for the first time since he had found her, William realized that saving Catherine from physical prison had been only the beginning. The emotional prison that Rebecca had created between them was still there, solid and apparently insurmountable. Catherine's departure was silent and definitive. William woke up one Saturday morning and found a letter on the kitchen table, along with the wedding ring she had worn for 15 years. The familiar handwriting, still a bit shaky from the effects of trauma, carried words he read and reread until he memorized them. "William, I couldn't say this in person because I knew you would try to convince me to stay, and I would end up giving in out of weakness, not conviction. I need time to understand who I became after everything that happened. I need to discover if there's still a possible us, or if Rebecca destroyed that forever. Don't try to find me. When I'm ready, I'll come back, or I won't. But it will be my decision, made with clarity, not fear. Catherine." William sat in the chair where she had breakfast every morning since returning, held the ring in his palm, and cried like he hadn't cried since childhood. The office became his refuge and his prison. Mary, who had returned to work after all the confusion, watched him with maternal concern that he didn't know if he deserved. Emma, now a small local celebrity for finding Catherine, visited the office frequently, always bringing drawings or small gifts. "Mr. William," she said one Thursday afternoon, approaching the desk where he tried to concentrate on financial reports. "Why are you always sad?" The direct child's question caught him off guard. "Sometimes adults get sad, Emma. It's normal." "But you saved Mrs. Catherine. You should be happy." William looked at the girl and saw wisdom that contrasted with her 9 years of age. Saving someone isn't the same as deserving their forgiveness. Emma considered this for a moment. "My mom says that when we do something wrong, we have to do more than apologize. We have to show we've changed." "And how do you show that, in your opinion?" "By being different. By doing different things." The simplicity of the answer hit him like lightning. William had spent weeks lamenting, waiting for Catherine to return so he could ask for forgiveness. But he had done nothing to change, nothing to become the man who deserved a second chance. That night, he made the first real decision since Catherine's departure. He called Dr. Stevens. "Albert, I need a psychologist recommendation. The best one you know." "For Catherine?" "For me." Dr. Albert Stevens was silent for a moment. "William, that's courageous." "It's not courage, it's necessity. I need to understand how I became a man capable of replacing his own wife without questioning. I need to understand how I was so blind, so absent." 3 days later, William was in Dr. Marina Thompson's office, a 60-year-old woman with graying hair and a penetrating gaze that didn't allow half-truths. "Tell me about your marriage before the kidnapping," was her first question. William hesitated. For weeks, he had romanticized the life they had before, painting an idyllic picture that Rebecca had destroyed. But in the psychologist's presence, the truth began to emerge. "We were cordial, polite. We lived in the same house, but in separate worlds." "And did that bother you?" "At the time, no. I thought it was normal, that mature marriages were like that." "And Catherine, did she seem satisfied?" William remembered her attempts to talk, the invitations for walks he refused because he was busy, the nights she went to bed before he came home. "No, Catherine wasn't satisfied, and I pretended not to notice because it was easier." "Easier than what?" "Easier than facing the fact that I had become a stranger in my own life, that I used work to avoid intimacy, emotional responsibility, real connection." The sessions became a weekly ritual, then twice a week. William began to understand patterns he had developed since adolescence, using professional success to mask emotional inadequacy, confusing material provision with love, avoiding vulnerability at any cost. When Rebecca appeared, he said in a particularly difficult session, "She offered exactly what I wanted. Someone who would solve emotional problems for me without demanding that I change." And now I understand why Catherine needs time. I need to prove I can be different, not to win her back, but because it's the right thing to do. The change began small, but it was real. William began arriving earlier at the office and leaving at normal hours. He stopped working on weekends. More importantly, he began to really see the people around him. Mary was surprised when he asked about Emma's studies, offered to pay for private school for the girl. She was even more surprised when he said, "Mary, you've worked here for 8 years, and I never asked about your dreams. What would you like to do if you could choose anything?" "Mr. William, please, I'm asking seriously." Mary hesitated, then smiled shyly. "I've always wanted to have a small business, a diner maybe. But it's just a silly dream. It's not silly. And what if I lent you the money to start? No interest, no hurry to pay back. Would you do that? I would. I should have done it years ago. It was a beginning, a small beginning, but genuine. William was learning to be the man Catherine had always hoped he would be. The question was, would it be too late? 8 months had passed since Catherine left, and William had become a completely different man. Mary's diner was prospering in the town centre. Emma had started at private school and was getting excellent grades, and he himself had found a balance between work and life he never thought possible. It was on a Tuesday afternoon that Dr. Stevens called with news that made William's heart race. "William, Catherine is at the hospital." The world seemed to stop. "What happened? Is she okay?" "She is. Calm down. She fainted at work and was brought here. We discovered where she was living, working. William, she's pregnant." William had to sit down. Catherine was pregnant. After years of trying to have children unsuccessfully, after all the trauma, she was expecting a baby. "The baby is." "It's yours, yes. She's about 7 months along. It was conceived before the kidnapping. Probably that last night you were together." William remembered. The night of the terrible fight had ended unexpectedly. When he returned home very late, he found Catherine awake. They talked little but embraced, made love with the intensity of those who knew something was unraveling between them. "Where is she living?" "In a small town, 2 hours from here." "William, she doesn't want you to come." "What do you mean?" "She specifically told me to call you, tell you about the pregnancy, but ask that you not come to the hospital." William was silent for a long moment. "Did she say anything else?" "She said she'll think about whether she wants you to be part of the baby's life, and that she'll give you an answer when she's ready." That night, William couldn't sleep. He walked through the empty house, imagining Catherine pregnant, alone, dealing with all the physical and emotional changes without him. The temptation to ignore her request and drive to the hospital was almost irresistible, but he didn't go. As painful as it was, he respected her decision. Instead, he began to prepare. He transformed the old home office into a baby room, buying neutral furniture in shades of green and yellow. He read books about fatherhood, about child development, about how to create a loving and stable environment for a child. 2 weeks later, Mary arrived at the office with a strange expression. "Mr. William, there's a young lady outside who wants to talk to you. She says she knows Mrs. Catherine." William stood up, his heart racing. But it wasn't Catherine who was in the reception. It was a young woman, brunette, whom he didn't know. "Mr. Morrison, I'm Claire, Catherine's friend. She asked me to come talk to you." "How is she? Is the baby okay?" "Both are fine. Catherine, she would like to talk to you in person." William felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. "When? Where?" "Tomorrow, at 3 in the afternoon, at the central square of the town where she's living. She said you would know where it is." It was the square where they had kissed for the first time 15 years before, during a weekend trip when they were still dating. Catherine had chosen that place purposefully. The next morning, William dressed with the same care he had when he was courting Catherine. He drove the 2 hours to her town with his heart in his throat, mentally rehearsing what he would say, how he would react to seeing her pregnant. He arrived at the square 15 minutes before the scheduled time. Catherine was already there. She was sitting on a bench under a tree, wearing a blue dress that accentuated her rounded belly. She had gained a little weight, had more color in her skin, longer hair. She seemed at peace, different from how he had left her, but at peace. William approached slowly, as if he feared she might disappear again. "Hello, Catherine." "Hello, William." They looked at each other for a long moment. William saw that she was observing him carefully, noting changes in him too. He had lost weight, grown a beard she had always liked, and there was something different in his eyes. "You look Different, she said finally. You too. You look beautiful. Catherine touched her belly instinctively. William, I need to tell you some things, and I need you to listen to everything before responding, okay? Okay. During these months, I thought a lot about us, about what we were before Rebecca, about what she destroyed, and about what we might be able to be in the future. William remained silent, respecting her request. I forgive you, she said, and he felt his legs wobble. I forgive because I understood that you were also her victim, in a different way, but you were a victim. And I forgive because I see you've changed. Claire told me about Mary's diner, about Emma's school, about how you're different. Catherine, let me finish. I forgive you, but that doesn't mean we can go back to being what we were. That marriage was dead long before Rebecca appeared. If we're going to try again, it has to be from scratch, as different people building something new. And do you want to try? Catherine smiled for the first time since he had arrived. I want to know the man you've become, and I want you to know the woman I've become, and I want our child to be born into a family where love is real, not just convenient. William felt tears rolling down his face. Can I touch your belly? Catherine nodded. William approached, gently placed his hands on the belly where his child was growing, and felt a small kick in response. Hello, little one, he whispered. Daddy is here, and he's going to stay forever. When he looked up, he saw that Catherine was crying too. But they weren't tears of sadness. For the first time in a long time, they were tears of hope. The new beginning was like learning to walk again. William and Catherine met twice a week, always in public places, always for determined periods. It was like dating in reverse. Two people who had already known each other intimately, now rediscovering who they were after so much pain. How was your therapy? Catherine asked during lunch at a small diner in the town where she lived. The question didn't sound invasive, but genuinely interested. William had told her about the sessions with Dr. Thompson, about the painful discoveries about himself. Difficult, he admitted. Yesterday we talked about how I used work to avoid intimacy, not just with you, but with anyone who might demand vulnerability from me. Catherine nodded, absent-mindedly touching her belly, which was now in the 8th month. I also started therapy, she said, to deal with the trauma, but also to understand why I accepted for so long a marriage where I felt invisible. And what did you discover? That I was afraid to demand more from you because I might lose the little I had. I preferred crumbs of attention to risking a real confrontation. It was a conversation they would never have been able to have before. The tragedy had broken them, but it had also removed the layers of pretense that made real communication impossible. Catherine, William hesitated, can I ask how you decided to forgive me? It wasn't a rational decision, she replied. It was a process. First came anger, then sadness, then acceptance. And when I could accept that we had both failed in the marriage, I could also accept that we could both learn from the mistakes. A contraction made Catherine contort slightly. William immediately stood up. Are you okay? Yes. They're just practice contractions. Dr. Stevens said it's normal at this stage. But when she tried to get up to go to the bathroom, a stronger pain made her stop halfway. William, she said with a calm that contrasted with the concern in her eyes, I don't think these are practice contractions. The birth of Peter was quick and intense. William drove like he had never driven in his life, taking Catherine to the hospital in the town where she lived, holding her hand during each contraction, whispering words of encouragement that came from deep within his soul. Breathe, my love. Breathe. He's coming. Peter was born at 11:47 p.m. on a rainy Thursday. weighing 7 pounds and 1 ounce, with the healthy lungs of someone who came into the world crying his existence for all to hear. When the doctor placed the baby in Catherine's arms, William saw a transformation in her face that took his breath away. "Hi, Peter," she whispered, gently touching the flushed little face. "Mommy and Daddy are here." Mommy and Daddy. The words sounded like a promise of the future. William approached, looking at his son with a mixture of terror and ecstasy he had never experienced. "Can I hold him?" Catherine smiled and carefully passed the baby to his father's arms. Peter immediately stopped crying, as if he recognized the voice he had heard through his mother's belly in recent weeks. "Hi, Peter," William murmured, feeling tears flow freely. "I'm your daddy, and I'm going to love you every day of my life." That dawn, while Catherine slept exhausted and Peter rested in the crib beside the bed, William stayed awake, watching them both. For the first time in his adult life, he felt he was exactly where he should be, being exactly who he should be. Dr. Stevens appeared early in the morning to check on mother and baby. "Everyone well?" he asked, examining Peter with the affection of someone who had followed the pregnancy from the beginning. "Perfect," Catherine replied, radiant despite the exhaustion. "And the parents? How are the parents?" William and Catherine looked at each other. It was a simple question, but loaded with meaning. "We're learning," Catherine said finally. "Learning to be a family," William completed. "Doctor," Stephen smiled. "It's the best kind of learning there is." 3 days later, when Catherine and Peter were discharged from the hospital, William faced a decision that would define everything that came after. "Catherine," he said while packing the baby's things, "you and Peter can come home, our home, if you want." "William, let me finish. I transformed the house. It's no longer that house where we lived like strangers. It's smaller, cozier. I sold the mansion and bought a simple house where we can really be a family." Catherine looked at him surprised. "You sold the mansion?" "I sold it. That place had too many memories of the people we were. I want to start somewhere new, with the people we are now." Catherine gently rocked Peter, thinking, "And if it doesn't work out, what if we discover that forgiving isn't enough to rebuild a marriage?" "Then at least we tried the right way," William replied. "But Catherine, I believe it will work, not because we forgot the past, but because we learned from it." Catherine looked at the sleeping child, then at William. "Okay," she said finally, "let's go home. But slowly, William, one day at a time." "One day at a time," he agreed, and for the first time since everything had begun, William felt that the future wasn't something to be controlled, but something to be built together, with patience, love, and the courage to be vulnerable. 5 years had passed since Peter's birth, and life had found a new, authentic rhythm. The house William had bought was modest compared to the previous mansion, but it was always full of life. Toys scattered around the living room, Peter's drawings stuck on the refrigerator, the sound of laughter echoing through the halls. Catherine was in the kitchen preparing breakfast when William came downstairs carrying Peter, who at 5 years old already chattered non-stop about everything he saw. "Daddy, why does Grandma Mary make the best donuts in the world?" the boy asked, referring to Mary, who had become a beloved adoptive grandmother. "Because she puts love into everything she does," William replied, kissing his son's forehead before placing him in the chair. Catherine smiled upon hearing the response. The William from before would never have given such an affectionate, so present answer. "Emma is coming for lunch today," she said, serving the coffee. "She wants to tell us about getting accepted to medical school." Emma had become part of the family over the years. The brave girl who had saved Catherine was now a 14-year-old young woman, determined to become a doctor. William had created a scholarship fund for her, but more important than the money was the genuine affection that had grown between all of them. "And how is the foundation project going?" Catherine asked. William had transformed part of his business into a foundation that helped victims of domestic violence and kidnapping. Catherine's case had opened his eyes to a world of suffering he had never seen before. "Well, this week we helped 3 women start new lives in safe cities, and the professional training program is working better than expected." Peter, who was playing with his cereal, suddenly looked up. "Daddy, Mommy, do you love each other?" The innocent question made them both laugh. "Yes, Peter, very much," Catherine replied. "But you used to fight, right? Aunt Emma told me." William and Catherine looked at each other. They had decided to be honest with Peter about the past, in an age-appropriate way. "Yes, we fought," William said, "because we were still learning how to love each other right. And now you know." "Now we know that loving is a choice we make every day," Catherine replied. "It's choosing to be kind, to be present, to listen to each other. And to apologize when we make mistakes," William added. Peter nodded solemnly, as if he were filing away important information for the future. Later that day, while Peter napped, William and Catherine sat on the small porch of the house, watching the garden she had planted with such care. "There's something I want to tell you," Catherine said, her voice carrying special emotion. William looked at her, noticing a different sparkle in her eyes. "What is it?" "I'm pregnant again." The silence that followed was different from all the previous silences in their lives. It was a silence full of possibilities, of contained joy, of future. "Are you sure?" "I took the test yesterday. I'm about 6 weeks along." William kissed her gently, then rested his forehead against hers. "How do you feel? Happy, scared, grateful?" She laughed. "Everything at once. And Peter will love having a little brother or sister." "He will." Catherine paused. "William, you know we're different now, right? Completely different from who we were." "I know, and you know that doesn't scare me anymore, right? Changes, challenges, the unknown. I learned that the good life isn't the controlled life, it's the life lived with truth." That evening, while they prepared dinner together and Peter helped by placing napkins on the table, William had a crystal-clear perception. This was the life that had always been within reach, but that he had been unable to see because he was trapped in patterns of superficiality and control. Rebecca had tried to destroy them and almost succeeded. But paradoxically, she had also freed something that was suffocated, the ability to love deeply, to be vulnerable, to build a life based on real connection instead of convenience. "Daddy," Peter called him during dinner. "When I grow up, I'm going to be a doctor like Emma. I'm going to take care of hurt people." "It's a beautiful profession," Catherine said. "But you can be whatever you want, Peter. The important thing is that you're a good person." "Like you." William and Catherine looked at each other and smiled. "Like we're trying to be," William corrected. "Every day we're trying to be better." After Peter went to bed, William and Catherine stayed in the living room, he reading a book about child education, she knitting a small sweater she had started without knowing why, and which now made perfect sense. "Catherine? Thank you." "For what?" "For coming back. For giving me a second chance. For choosing to build this with us, instead of simply moving on alone." Catherine looked at him over her knitting. "William, I didn't come back out of generosity. I came back because I discovered that true love isn't the kind that ignores flaws. It's the kind that sees flaws and chooses to grow together with them. And do you choose to grow with me?" "Every day," she replied. "Every day I choose you. And you. Every day I choose you. And our family. And this life we built from scratch." From Peter's room came a sleepy murmur. "Mommy, Daddy, good night." "Good night, my love," they responded in unison. And in that moment, sitting in the simple living room of a modest house, William knew he had found true wealth, a family built on truth, forgiveness, and the daily courage to love well. End of the narrative.